So as I tried to do the next video, I ended up just quitting in frustration because this mod wasn't working properly, unfortunately. Uh, it was doing a few, like, let's see, one of these reactions was broken to purify clay, and another one you couldn't even do because it didn't have any ability. It required like graphite powder, and it didn't include any way to grind graphite into powder. And even going through all of these um, recommended mods, such as like the stained glass one, it didn't have any way to grind graphite either. So like, I don't know if he just forgot or if it's dependent on another mod that isn't listed or what, but I had to work around that. And also the way the mod was working was just frustrating. Oh, like um well, I'll get into it here. So, because I'm basically just going to do a short video here on how to mod a mod. So in my mods folder, and I just use like the Steam loaded mods folder so that the game will uh, like reinstall my mod whenever I need it to. I have a bunch of tweaks. So, I mean, some of these I just, wrote myself, but most of them are me tweaking other mods. And so I have this edit to this mod right here and the comparisons. So I was trying to get fire clay out of this reaction here, this prepare clay, and found that it wasn't working at all. And the problem seemed to be like it wanted to have it do a little bit of everything, I guess, well, I mean, that's the main problem, is that it would randomly produce, like purifying clay would randomly produce fire clay or regular clay from purifying contaminated clay, or produce some kaolinite or a little bit of sand, and it was this that broke the whole thing. So that they bring all the reagents into the workshop, and then nothing would be produced or used. It would just like, yeah, and I tried, thinking that, well, maybe it's because this is randomized. So the first thing I did was try, changing one of these to like product 100%, and it was still not working. And I found out the problem is the sand thing, like creating sand. You bring in an empty bag, and it's supposed to, put a little bit of sand in the bag, and when I deleted that, it started working. So that was the first thing I did. The second, though, is I wanted a more. Um, I thought that this is trying to do too much with one reaction, and what I really wanted was just to be able to produce fire clay. And so I came up with my own recipe for fire clay based on, a quick Wikipedia search or something. And I mean, I don't care if it's too accurate or not. Um, and I just replaced this produce clay because I'm not going to need to produce regular clay with like clay stone. So I was just like, yeah, I'll just use this for now because you can't add new reactions to a game that's already started. So I just replaced this, and so I made it so that instead, you bring in a bunch of regular clay, one chunk of kaolin, and some sand. That was like a recipe for like manufactured clay that I saw online. And then you produce. I changed it so that you're guaranteed to get at least as many boulders as you put in come out, and if there's extra materials, you'll get like a random chance of getting some extra clay, because that's a nice little bonus. I really didn't like how the production of clay was totally randomized. Like that's why there's so many of these, is because each one is a 50% chance, and the mod author just had to copy paste them to make sure that the player would get anything at all. And half the time with something like this, you didn't anyway, because it's pure RNG. It's not, like you could try to roll 50% 100 times in a row and not get it. I mean, that's rare, but that's true RNG. So I thought, no, I don't like reaction failure isn't a mechanic in Dwarf Fortress. So introducing it so that the dwarves are just sitting in the workshop wasting their time, not producing anything, was one of the big frustrations. The other one was the author, and I think he mentioned it down here. They wanted to be able to turn any kind of clay into any other kind of clay, and that was causing so many problems. So what would happen is that you'd produce a clay you wanted, say, and then if you wanted to produce another one, like just hit it on repeat. Well, if someone hadn't hauled that clay out of the kiln, they would just use that same clay. And so, say you were producing this yellowware clay, well, you'd be using this same yellowware boulder to produce another boulder, and you'd just be like wasting your materials, producing the same boulder over and over again. So I had to go in and actually change um, the materials, because what he did was he has this I'm pretty sure the mod author is he. Uh, this reaction class earthenware for all clay. And that's how he made all these clays kind of interchangeable, one for another. And then he added, using the select, um, added the same reaction class to all of the original clays, so that these reactions all used, well, you can see it here, this, where is it? Reaction class earthenware. Yeah, here. So basically any clay boulder that has this reaction class, and I had to change it by adding a completely new tag, because there's only a couple ways to update something like this. The select lets you add things, but if you want to remove things, you have to cut and then repaste the object's entire material properties. And so, well, here's an example. This is just some of my own tweaks to ceramics to start off. Like I cut cassiterite so that it removed this glaze material, because I hated using an entire cassiterite ore to glaze one pot. And so I removed it from cassiterite and I changed it to tin. So yeah, now it uses a tin bar. And oh, this was another thing. In this mod, in this mod, he accidentally misspelled earthenware, so this is just fixing a typo. Um, and then I added these. So this new reaction class is treated clay, and treated clay will not be used to make a different type of treated clay. You need untreated clay, which I added to all of the original clays. Actually, I should change this right now, because the contaminated clay, no, actually, no. Um, right, because now the purified clay will only take treated clay and turn it back into regular clay. because, well, this is something I knew from um, my dad is like a glass blower as a hobbyist, and one thing he always said is that like once you color glass, it can't be like just ground up and remelted into the um, into the glass furnace because it's been contaminated with whatever coloring you used, and it is really really difficult to get rid of those. And so I didn't want to be able to use, like being able to use one clay in place of another clay didn't make any sense. Like you take this, yellowware clay that contains lead and use it to make terracotta. Like that doesn't make any sense at all. Uh, so I added another step to turn it back into regular clay, and you still end up with like one contaminated clay boulder, because basically it's like you got three boulders, you get two clean ones out of this process and one extra dirty one, um, out of trying to get the whatever the lead, the iron, the cobalt or whatever out of the clay. So that was one big change I made to the mod, so that I was getting the right products out of the kiln and the right products into the kiln. And so yeah, these now produce like, it's like you use three clay boulders, you get three in, three out. I just don't like the idea of completely randomizing this. Like it gets kind of ridiculous here when you're getting into like trying to make sure that the player just gets at least gets one out of this process, because you're using up here you're using up like a flux stone or something, and the list, it gets longer and longer and longer, so that you could randomly get almost nothing, or you could randomly get way more out than you put in. And I was like, yeah, no, that that doesn't work for me. I don't like that. So I just made my own personal change here, you know. And trying to randomize getting the contaminated clay out of this too, because it makes the those like blemishware ceramic, which actually, I mean, it's a low quality clay, but uh, I'm fine with that. I actually like the color of it, so I don't mind getting contaminated clay, like piles of it, as like a like sort of offshoot of the process. But yeah, okay, yeah. So this one, yeah, the prepared graphite clay powder. I was like, looked through every mod I had that was even semi-related, and there's none. So what I did was I actually changed it to, I went into his other mod, and it's easier to find these in the installed mods folder here. The This is the stained glass one, and I went into the stone powders and used the same one they used for black glass, and there was like different ways you could get this black powder, and it just had this reaction class, black stained glass pigment. So I just copied that from the black stained glass reaction, and we're going to use that instead. And then this one, like a graphite bar, I just changed to a boulder. So you can like take just a big chunk of graphite and turn it into a bunch of clay. And then the last thing I did was I did also added here an edit to his bone clay, which comes from a completely different mod. That was this, grinding bones into flux. So I added those here, and I'm going to have to test it a little bit more, but by the time I do the next video, I should have all of this working the way I like it. So I mean, it's fairly easy to like. Oh yeah. Um, it's yeah. Okay. So just talking sort of more in general about the modding is that it's really easy to do one of these files. Like it just needs to be just a couple things. Like it needs to have like this kind of like an object classifier right at the very start. This needs to be here. It needs to match the name of the text file, or else the game just won't read it. And the other thing too that was, oh yeah, one last thing that really bothered me about this mod is that, so in terms of the metal bar reagents, when it says like reagent lead 1, that means it will use only 1% of the bar. And so you get a bar that says, like you'd have a lead bar in your leftover in your kiln that said like lead 99%. But this min dimension means that the um, this is like the minimum number of, I guess, like weight units. A bar is typically 100. A bag is typically like a bag of ground flux or whatever is typically like um, 150. Like one of these ones uses like bucket of lye. That's 150. And so, I mean, here, this reaction now, I decided like it uses like a third of the milk of lime. Oh yeah, milk of lime, not lye. Just to make it less. I find it really annoying when you have to like constantly pump out something like this, which takes so like first you have to make quick lime, then you have to make milk of lime, and then use it in this process. And I was just like, yeah, I think being able to do like 3 of these before you have to make another, just like, yeah, it's just less annoying. So, but yeah, this using 1% of a lead bar and then and then this min dimension means that it requires a full lead bar. So you have a 99% lead bar that's just useless. It can't be used for anything anymore. And when the point of, I think, this min dimension is to make sure that you don't use more than, like, if your bar was at like 8% and it required like 10, then it wouldn't be enough. So this min dimension is not supposed to match the size of the item you're using. It's supposed to match the amount that you're using. So I changed that for every single one of these. And yeah, the only way to fix all these was to like cut the reaction and then just rewrite it from scratch. Which, my mod comes after these ones specifically for this reason. But yeah, so it's like if you use like a bag of sand is like a weight unit of 150. And so if you're using 50 of it, 1/3, then the min dimension has to be 50. But also I changed the minimum for using metals to like 10 units rather than 1. Just because I was finding that it was really unbalanced in that way. Like once I fixed the um, yeah, once I fixed these so that I could just do them over and over and over, it was like it would take like hardly any lead to make this kind of clay. And so it's like you could do like 100, yeah, you could do like 100 lead before, or 100 of these before you needed a new bar of lead. And I just thought, well, I got a ton of lead. Yeah, and I mean all the other bars too. I've never been hurting for bars of metal. I think that, and especially if I'm guaranteeing that you're going to get something out of it, I just thought, yeah, well, I'm just going to turn it to like a minimum of 10 of every metal reagent. The other ones might take a like, like it's This is 30 because you're putting in 3 clay boulders. So, just because this version, you can either use a bar of cobalt, which you can use with the cobalt crafting mod. It's basically, this is designed for that. But this is for, I guess, an option for someone who doesn't have that cobaltite mod, so that you can use just a cobaltite boulder. But that's a lot more of a product than the bar, because you get 4 bars out of this. So I thought, well, how about you get more clay out of it? You get more boulders. So yeah, for any of these, from solids, from boulders, if that's the reaction, then it takes 3 clay and you just get a lot more product out than if you're using a powder. Like here we the whiteware. The whiteware, you could either use one of these bags of flux powder that you can make with, you know, with these other mods. I think this one synergizes with the grinding bones mod, and so it's like, maybe you only want 1 clay, you can do it with a smaller amount of flux powder. Whereas this, it's like you're using a flux stone, so start with more product in, get more product out. Oh, hey, buddy. So yeah, sorry, cat wanted my attention. Oh yeah, goes into his little cave. So I hope all of this ends up working out. And ends up less frustrating, more balanced than it had been, because it was, oh boy, I uh, I didn't think it would be entertaining to continue the video like that, because it was like watching me deal with broken mods is not as fun as dealing with, capital F fun in the game. So yeah, I'll be restarting the new year with this hopefully working.